here and let you make these statements.
Not to get too mean, Malcolm. I read your book, David and Goliath. Of course you don't want to hear it. I'm sorry, it's not my fault, it's yours. And your fact check.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are good, guys. Today we're going to be reacting to Douglas Murray's Obliterates mainstream journalists in heated debate, guys. Let's get right down to this.
The New York Times and the entire, basically, mainstream media spent years following a fake story about Donald Trump being in league with Vladimir Putin to fix the 2016 election. It was a wrong story. We have a leaked audio tape that was published in Slate.com where the editor of the New York Times says, well, they got caught a little flat-footed on that one because, our readers who want Donald Trump to go away are going to be disappointed about this. He says, we built our entire newsroom around one story, and they got it wrong. There's no way to defend that kind of inaccuracy, and it only happens if everybody wants so badly for it to be true that they overlook all the guardrails that are in place. No serious journalist that I know looked at that story and didn't have qualms about it.
I was greatly amused by the affection Matt Taibbi has for the age of Walter Cronkite, which he seemed to hold up as a kind of golden moment. In that moment, the mainstream media was populated entirely by white men from elite schools. Why you would have had such affection and say that's the gold standard, and we should trust the mainstream media precisely at the moment when the mainstream media is least representative, is really puzzling to me. I would point out that at the height of Walter Cronkite's reign in American media, neither people like Michelle and I wouldn't have been on the stage, right? We weren't part of the conversation. So I don't know why we should hold such a kind of affection for that moment.
Malcolm, you did a little nasty jab there, I noticed, Matt, by trying to pretend that Matt Taibbi is desperate for the era of white men in broadcasting. It takes a certain chutzpah to make that claim, but I don't see any reason why that is the case with Matt. I don't think that you are hankering desperately for a world of white news presenters. We've only just met, but you didn't give off that vibe to me.
Yes, there are processes. Fact-checking is important. I do it. I hire fact-checkers to do it. But this is not the standard process for all mainstream media institutions anymore. We don't do it as much as we used to. Part of that is for financial reasons.
Wait, I can't sit here and let you make these statements that without any kind of, we don't do that as much as we used to for financial reasons. I mean, I worked at the New Yorker. The New Yorker, if anything, spends more money on fact-checking today than it did in the past. I would have thought, with my first book, I didn't hire a fact-checker, but then I observed the number of errors in it. I also observed that the nature of the journalism world in which we live, the scrutiny of journalists is such that it's really perilous not to have a fact-checker, and so now I have fact-checkers. Many other people, I think, have observed the same thing, that there is now so much attention paid to the accuracy of things that writers say that you'd better make sure you don't have errors in your... So, I mean, Matt, I understand that you do have this wonderful nostalgia for the way things used to be, but I think that you need to fact-check some of your nostalgic notions about the wonderful world of the 1950s. Who was watchdogging the New York Times in the 1950s? Nobody was. There was a tiny little universe of people now watchdog institutions like that, and so they have a higher commitment to the truth.
So first of all...
Hold on, Matt. Let's bring Douglas in on this. I just want to hear his voice.
Doug is speechless.
I'm never speechless. It's not a problem I suffer from. I can't sit here and listen to Malcolm Gladwell talking about fact-checking and the importance of it. Not to get too mean, Malcolm. I read your book, David and Goliath. The chapter on Northern Ireland is more filled with inaccuracies than any other chapter in a non-fiction book I have read.
Cut out was Mike. Oh, the right hand!
It is Having written a not very well selling, but widely acclaimed book on Northern Ireland myself, my book on Northern Ireland didn't sell anywhere near as much as yours did, Malcolm. But mine was filled with facts. And
Well, now.
your chapter on Northern Ireland was so filled with inaccuracies. Irish historians ripped it apart. Would that you had a fact checker, Malcolm. Would that you did your own research. But anyway, let me get back to another point.
I must say, you do a very good job of it. But you must say, you do have a tendency to accuse those who disagree with your opinions.
No, it's not disagreement.
It's
not disagreement, Malcolm. You didn't know. You didn't know that the provisional IRA were responsible for 60% of the deaths in the Troubles. There were basic things you just didn't know, Malcolm. No. I'm sorry, it's not my fault, it's yours. And your fact checkers.
I didn't know that the function of this debate was to rehash the accuracy of a chapter in a book
well,
that I wrote.
you were the one that started talking
ago.
about fact checkers. I'm simply saying, why don't you employ some?
I suspect
or your publishers.
Douglas,
why don't I make the point I wanted to make other than that?
Briefly, yes. Good Lord.
So take the Hunter Biden story.
Oh, here we go.
Okay?
I'm sorry.
Of course you don't want to hear it.
Is there no end to the kind of Twitter stuff you guys are going to dredge up?
Of course you don't want to hear it, Malcolm. Of course you wouldn't, because it goes against your ideological presumptions. That story was a big story, okay? It was a big story. The New York Post, which I write for, but the New York Post, America's oldest newspaper, was silenced on Twitter, was silenced across the media. You know, the Washington Post has now picked it up. It's saying that, yeah, the laptop's true. But why didn't the media pick it up before? Why didn't they call up people? Why didn't they check whether the emails were accurate? Because they didn't want Biden to lose the election. He was their guy. And they weren't going to screw that up.
But I do want to talk about the Hunter Biden laptop, because I actually was telling Malcolm, we were talking this morning, and I said, I bet they're going to want to talk about the Hunter Biden laptop. And he said to me, really? Who would care about that?
Yeah,
but the security experts who examined the data for the Post struggled to reach definitive conclusions about the contents as a whole, including whether all of it originated from a single computer or could have been assembled from files from multiple computers and put on the portable drive. So the media has covered this, but they have also been, I think, careful, given the fact that this stuff still cannot be authenticated. And I spoke at the very beginning about the media kind of trying to self-correct, sometimes to a fault.
Malcolm, you're kind of, oh my God, what a yawnaroo the whole Hunter Biden story is. How boring to talk about the idea of corruption at an epic scale in the first family. How boring. Who would want to harp on about that? Let me try the counterfactual on you. It's October 2020. And a huge number of emails are suddenly dumped, revealing unbelievable scandal in the Trump family. I don't want to concentrate on the dick pics and the crack and stuff. Never mind about Don Jr. if he'd been doing that. Let's just focus on the emails. There was a very easy way, Michelle, as you know, to certify whether this stuff was true. You could call up anyone on the email chains and say, did you get this email? They didn't bother with any of that stuff. They'd have been excited as hell across most of the mainstream media if this had been emails from Donald Trump's son saying, and I'm no Trump fan, let's not get into that cheap rut. But if it had been Don Jr. saying to his child, you've no idea what I've done for this family, the demeaning things I've gone through, I have to give half of everything I earn to my dad. Oh, you're Nauru, definitely. Who'd care about that? No, the point is simply that this was one of the occasions in recent years where the mainstream media showed its transparency as a political organization. That's why we care.
Okay. Well, you know, I was struck once again in listening to our opponents by how much their arguments resemble the kind of classic structure of a conspiracy theory. A conspiracy theory is a theory in which one assumes a degree of unanimity and collaboration amongst one's foes, right? The conspiracist speaks of those who disagree with himself or herself as if they had a single voice. And there are numerous really unpleasant examples of this. This is not one of those. This is a much milder, more naive variant on the traditional conspiratorial model. But nonetheless, when Matt and Doug speak about the mainstream media, they're acting as if there's a big room, possibly in New York or in Washington, D.C., or maybe in between, so that each party has equal access to the room, in which everyone gathers every morning and makes up the agenda for the day, right? And the people fly in from the big news networks, and someone from CBC comes down, and this cabal of high-minded, well-paid, elite white, as it turns out, journalists, some of them, the ones that Matt seems to have such affection for, gather together and set the agenda for the country.
It's so strange hearing you debate, Malcolm, because you listen to nothing that your opponents say. It's quite extraordinary. I've met it before, but never quite so badly as it occurs in you. You keep saying things that neither of us have said, and then you try to pathologize what we say. You decide to say things like, it's a conspiracy theory. If it comes from this side, it's a conspiracy theory. You say, we don't do our research. We're just conspiracy theorists. Apparently mild dose of it, he says, in his excellent medical-like analysis of his opponents. We just have a mild dose. No, Malcolm, why don't you listen to what comes out of our mouths and try to learn something from it, as I am with you this evening? But at the moment, all I get is you dismissing every single story we come up with, every egregious failure of the mainstream media. I've given you a definition of what I think of as the mainstream media, so your attempt to claim that we haven't answered it yet is just another straw man in your massive legion of straw men you keep creating this evening. But I beg you to actually consider the fact that what we are describing is, even if you think not as accurate as you would like, an expression of a problem that is going on in our societies. Functioning liberal democracies need to have trust in their media. And the best that your side has been able to come up with so far tonight is to say, we get things wrong quite often, but you should trust us.
So guys, honestly, I feel like the mainstream media should be known for its transparency. People should be able to trust the media. People should be able to, rely on what the media gives out. Imagine not trusting the media. It's more like you're always receiving fake news. You just doubt whatever the media says. It's not going to be good for the community at all, or at large rather. But I feel people should be able to trust whatever the media produces. That's why I keep saying, not just even journalists, and not even just about the news. Like when I say news, I mean like the country and all, but like more like even social media, even like online, the things that blogs post. You should be able to check that this thing is true. Like, it's not just a rumor. There are different rumors that fly around, and it just, because of you want to get a lot of views and everything, you just rush to post it. You should be able to check that this thing is actually true before, uploading for everybody to see. Because I would say there was an incident that happened a few weeks back. Yeah, I don't think it's up to a month, maybe a month back or a few weeks. But a big star, in the Nollywood died, and he went on a boat ride, trying to cross over to another land, and he, according to what the people there said, the boat capsized. Now, they had not gotten the news perfectly, but the blogs were already posting that this guy is dead. RIP to this guy. And I'm like, are you guys sure? Are you guys sure? Because literally, we saw this same guy post few hours on his Instagram story, and then the next hour, the guy is dead. Where did you get your story from? So a lot of people were just writing RIP, 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 and his co-workers, co-colleagues were coming out to say, you guys should be sure about what you're saying, because when it comes to bad news, the blogs are just so ready to push it out to the whole world. You guys should check, be sure that this thing you're saying is true, than just spreading the rumor so quickly. Now, At the end of the day, we found out that this guy was still breathing when they brought him out of the water, and it was known to the whole world that this guy is dead. No, the guy actually died at the end of the day, but like the time when they posted the guy's dead news, he wasn't dead at that time. He was only missing in the water. So bringing him out, he was still alive. But then later on, because of how slow and uneducated the people around there were, how to try to keep someone and rush the person to the hospital and all those procedures, they didn't do all those things. So the guy ended up dying. But what I'm trying to say is, you should be sure about what you're posting. You get a rumor, you shouldn't just go upload it, because literally the people trust in what the blogs are bringing out. The same way we're watching the news, we trust that whatever the journalists are saying, whatever the TV presenters are actually telling us is to be true. That's how we trust you. So we seeing this whole RIP, he's dead, and everybody feeling some way, and then later on we see it's just like we can't even trust you to give us the right news, because we follow you and then we believe that this is what has happened, and then at the end of the day we're finding out that it's not true. So I feel like journalists should be transparent in delivering news to people, because a lot of people put their trust in them. And looking from this thing, I can actually say that this guy, it was more like he wasn't even listening to Douglas' side, like whatever they were saying, because like especially when he brought up the whole conspiracy theory, like there was no alignment to what he said. But guys, tell me what you think about this. Don't forget to like, subscribe to my channel. I love you guys.